So today we are in the Standard Hotel in London, and I'm joined by my very good friend, incredible hairstylist and co-founder of Bleach London, Alex Brownsell.
Hi.
I was really looking forward to doing this because obviously you make loads of friends, you know, in the industry, but it's actually very rare that you get to ask people about their journey. I mean, I know you very well from work and going out and stuff, but I actually don't really know much about, you know, where you grew up and how you got into the fashion industry, and also something that Alex just told me. You launched Bleach London when you were 22. Which is absolutely baffling to me. I mean, you're so young. And I do want to talk about that at some point because it would be interesting to, you know, think about how things were when you were 22 versus now and what opening a business was like. But we'll get to that. But I would like to know, yeah, kind of, well, where you're from and how you got into the industry and along the way and everything. So,
Okay, great. Well, I'm from the Midlands. I'm from a village, which is only just a village by about 200 people. So it was nearly a hamlet. It's called Welton. It's in Northamptonshire. So that's where I'm from. And I started my hairdressing journey in the local town called Daventry, where my mum owned a hair salon. So I've been hairdressing for 22 years already, actually.
Wow.
So I started at 12.
what were you doing? Were you sweeping floors or doing trims or?
So my mum, she was just the coolest person I've ever met still, and I was obsessed with her, and she was obsessed with the salon and being a hairdresser. So at 11 I started asking her to come and be a Saturday girl. Thought that was the coolest thing I could do, was like hang out with her.
And this was
making
in
tea.
This was in this village.
This was in the town next to the village, still
Right.
really small. It's called Daventry.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the most famous thing that's ever happened there was it was mentioned on a McDonald's advert once, which was very cool. But it was in that town. So she finally let me go in and work for her at 12. I wasn't allowed to touch anyone until I was 13, but I made tea. It's a real like classic old lady salon.
Hair rollers and
Rollers,
lilac
sets,
tints and
lilac
stuff.
tints. My mum was like into the 80s style of hair colouring, which is where a lot of inspiration comes from Bleach actually. So I started doing that, and then by the time I was 16 I had a column. Hairdressers all know what that means. So in the written books every stylist has a column, and you fill your column up, and that's like what you do in life. But by the time I was 16 I had a column of ladies who would come in and have their hair dyed with me.
Wow.
Couple of trims, but I didn't cut hair that much. My mum cuts hair with the wrong finger. So as a hairdresser you use your ring finger to cut hair. She had an accident horse riding when she was little, so she used the middle finger, and she wouldn't teach me because it was wrong. So she was always like, if you really want to do this, you need to go to London.
So what's that about? Is that about balancing the scissors, or what is it about the ring? Why do you do it like that?
I think it's softer, so you have like, it's just the way
A lighter
you
touch
do it.
or something,
Yeah, lighter
yeah.
touch. So that one's quite chompy, and also I think it sets hairdressers apart from your average scissor user, and it's a real thing, like how you hold your scissors.
Yeah.
Use this finger. You're not allowed to move your thumb at all when you cut.
Interesting.
So she was always a bit chompy.
That's
so
why
she
my
would never
poor
teach
dad
me.
looks like someone from Blackadder every time I try and cut his hair because I'm getting the claws out. So you were colouring hair though from a very young age. You were doing, yeah.
So bleaching wasn't really a thing then. I'd never bleached anybody's hair, but we used bleach in that salon. I moved on to London at 16, so my original hairdressing career in Daventry was till then. So bleach existed, the product existed for highlights, but bleaching hair wasn't a thing. And I remember one weekend, me and my 13-year-old friend were obsessed with Gwen Stefani, and she'd dyed her hair black and hated it. And she said, can you make my hair blonde like Gwen Stefani? And I was like, yeah, of course. I used to clean the salon on a Sunday. So I got her to come in on the Sunday, and I was like, I know how to do this. Got the bleach on. It was black, dyed black. And I was like, we just wait till it goes blonde. And that was my very first bleaching experience.
And what happened?
All of her hair fell out. All of it. No. She had hair like yours, and you know, my mum ended up cutting her hair into a crop.
Wow.
So my very first hair bleaching experience was a really terrible one.
Yeah.
She was quite happy with it, but it was like, have you seen those YouTubes of people where the hair comes out?
Yeah,
in
like
clumps?
chewing gum.
Yeah, it was like that. It's never happened again. It was quite good, actually.
Learn your lesson, yeah, thanks to your friend. Wow. And so then you moved to London. Did you study or did you go straight into another salon? What was your journey like from Daventry to
So
London?
I went to London at 16 on the train before I got my GCSE results, having this idea that I was going to go to study science for like a decade. I wanted to go the full way. I wanted to be a chemist. Or
Is
a
that what you were
physicist.
studying? What were you doing for your GCSE
my
A-levels and
GCSEs,
stuff?
I didn't even get into A-levels, but I had been accepted to a really good school to do pure science and art. I got A's, straight A's in my GCSE. So I was kind of, you know, an edge case of hairdressing. And it's something that winds me up all the time, is that people assume hairdressers are, you know, not super educated, didn't do well at school. And actually lots of stylists at Bleach were really academic.
Yeah.
But obviously up to 16, it's not that far. But I was like, you know what, my parents can't afford to put me through 8 years of university, but I'm already a hairdresser. I can go to London for a year. I'll come back and finish everything.
Yeah.
So I'd read, my mum used to get the Hairdresser's Journal. Don't know if you've heard of that. I don't know if I think it still exists. It was the hairdressing magazine. And they had an article that month about the best hair salons in London. And there were people on there like Nikki Clark, John Frieda, etc. So I came to London for the day. I was like, right, I'm going to go to Nikki Clark. He's the most famous hairdresser in the world.
In the world, yeah.
So I remember walking into his shop on Mount Street, and just going to the reception and being like, have you got any jobs going? And they were like, have you got a CV? And I was a bit like, what's a CV?
No, but I can cut and colour, and I worked in a salon in Daventry.
Yeah. So I went to an internet cafe and wrote out CV, took it back in. I didn't get that job, but I'd walked into another person's salon on that list, and it was Daniel Hirschison. So I went in there and did the same thing, and they actually offered me a trial day on the spot. So I went back to Daventry. My mum didn't know I was going, so she was really annoyed. She was like, you know, you're 16, you can't just go to London for the day. But I said, I've got this trial day, come on, let me do it. So I came back to London, did the trial day, got the job. And then that was it, really. It was quite amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Straight into it.
Straight into
in a really
it.
prestigious hair salon.
Yeah, and I had no idea that session work existed. I just thought, you know, hairdressers, Tony and Guy was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
That's what you aspire to be.
Well, it kind of, back then it kind of was. I mean, even sort of, I don't know that much about hair, but I know what Tony and Guy is. And Tony and Guy was kind of, it was the editorial hair thing. It had the crazy cuts and it had all the amazing bobs, and that was kind of editorial hairstyling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it didn't exist really in magazines. It was just in salon windows and stuff, and in
And if people from Daventry, we had a Tony and Guy in Northampton, so that's the next big town. They're all very small towns. But people would go and spend like £60 on their Tony and Guy hair look.
Yeah.
And they would look amazing.
Yeah.
With their kind of Levi's twisted denim jeans, the spiky Tony and Guy hair, red like this as well was the colour.
It's funny, you've just actually I've sort of remembered something I probably haven't thought of for about 20 years, which I did used to buy those hair magazines. And of course you'd get them in hair salons as well, and you'd look through and you'd look at all the different cuts and the colours, and there'd be celeb photos and stuff. And do you even have things like that anymore?
Yeah, there are some. So it's quite industry focused. So there's one called Creative Head that a lot of good hairdressers actually shoot editorials for.
Oh, yeah.
I think Guido and Eugene occasionally do stuff for them. But I know everything's online now.
It's also funny because I often feel like I'll walk past a hair salon, and in the window there'll be like a really top model, like Tony Garn or even like Alice Dalal or somebody, and that was probably like hairstyling shots, so kind of what you do at the beginning of your career, aren't they? You go and do like hair tests, or you do like a hair campaign or something when you're kind of starting out. And so it's funny, you often see really famous models with like these funky cuts in windows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when did you do that?
Yeah, it's cool. Like L'Oreal shoot with a lot of the big girls, and they're the big contracts actually.
Yeah.
I think they're bigger than. I think they're better paid than makeup contracts.
Really?
Because they're not as prestigious. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's got that kind of like
Wrong job then, aren't I?
Well, for the models, I'm not sure for the
not
artists.
for the artists.
Well, because you have to ruin your hair basically as well.
Yeah,
they want to
that's
completely
true.
transform.
That's true. Yeah. So after Hairdresser, how did you then? Was that it for salon work? How did you move into the other?
So, well,
The other
I
side
didn't
of
go
things.
back to do my A-levels and my degree. Well, I wasn't signed up for a degree, but my fictitious degree I had in my mind. But I met some really amazing people in that salon. So, real testament to Daniel and Luke, who now owns the salon, Luke Hairdresser.
Yeah.
They had Lindell Mansfield was working there, who I worked with for many years. Rudy Lewis was there.
Oh, yeah.
There was a couple of, like, I've forgotten their names. There was a guy called John, who was Vidal Sassoon's assistant, who worked there. He was really old and amazing. And then there was another guy who was one of the founders or the original members of Moulton and Brown hair salon, which was big in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
So there was a real opportunity in there to kind of see lots of different areas of the industry. And I went on a show with Luke when I was 16, and I remember I was tonguing someone's hair properly for the first time, and it was Lily Cole, and she was reading Harry Potter and I was reading the same one. We were the same age.
Wow.
And I was there like, oh, this is fun, isn't it? Fashion Week's funny.
So were you learning how to tongue on the
Live,
job?
yeah. Live,
wow.
Yeah. Which is often the way if you do a show.
Well, that's something that I think people don't realise as well. When you're a hair or makeup artist and you have a team, often, of course you rely on your team to support you and do what you're doing, but you kind of have to teach people. You have to do, before you start a show, you do basically a tutorial, and then you're like, go ahead and do it. And it must be really, quite terrifying, especially with something like hair, because hair is it's like sculpting basically, isn't it? So
but I guess, with shows you get the team. Well, in that case, Luke obviously knew at 16 from Daventry I wasn't an expert hair tonga, but that's a real foundation part of the look. Yeah. So I can't remember what show it was actually. What would it have been? I remember. Yeah, I just got on with it. And was like, so naive. And I was like, what's your name? She's like, oh, Lily, what's your name? I was like, I'm reading that Harry Potter.
To be honest, it was probably like when she was starting out. So, you probably... and so you then started to work on your own. Were you testing? Who were the teams? Because I'm always interested in, hearing about the first kind of the people that you work with, the foundation basically. Yeah. That kind of, that you continue working with now. Who are the people that shaped you at the beginning?
So I went on to work with, assisting wise, Luke, Lindell and Rudy. But I spent a lot of time with Lindell, and she let me like test with a lot of people that she was working with, but I didn't do tons of tests. I think I did 2 and was like, oh, these are a bit weird, because it was all like crazy hair, crazy makeup, and I was like, it's fun, but I got booked quite early on because I was colouring a lot.
Right.
So my initial team.
And was that because you were really good at colouring because of the salon work?
Yeah, and the style of colouring, which is now kind of Bleach London style, wasn't really, you couldn't get that anywhere. Well, it's quite specialist.
You kind of, we have a baby in the background. We'll get to that. Alex has a 5-month-old baby, so we'll get to Bobby in a minute. But you kind of developed, I think that's the other thing, you basically created dip dye. And a whole host of other things, or at least you really went with it, and you made it
a lot more than anyone else.
You did it a lot more than anyone else, and
obviously it's not new. Like I think it was in a TLC. TLC had a dip dye.
You made it very accessible to people, and I think you had a lot of fun with colour, which was a really new thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's different now. I try and explain that to some of... Well, I don't try and explain it because it would be really big-headed, but with the new team, when we get Bleach, sometimes they're a bit like, this is fun colour. And I'm like, no, but basically 15 years ago, this wasn't a thing. You couldn't work in a salon and do creative colouring all day. You couldn't get your hair dyed pink. You couldn't get your hair bleached, in fact. I had that experience in Daventry. And, I remember doing it a lot when I was working at Hairdresser, and everyone was like, oh, nobody can really do this. There was one colourist that could bleach, and she ended up teaching me quite a lot. But yeah, it's quite interesting how it's changed now. So I was on a shoot the other day with a model, and we wanted to dye her hair blue, but she had a show the next day, so we did it pink because it washes out quickly. She was like, oh, I love this pink colour, but I don't really want to look like a posh West London girl. But she had a shaved head, with a pink shaved head, and I was a bit like, wow, you think that is that's commercial? Pink hair is commercial. I was a bit like, wow, that's gone so far.
How funny. Yeah. You were 17 when you moved to London officially.
16.
16. And then you launched Bleach when you were 22. So in that time, would you say the majority of your kind of life was spent working between salons and then assisting a little bit? And because that's still a period of, a few years, what got you to Bleach, basically, because it's such a huge achievement and there's such a big thing?
So it was, in those 6 years, I left the salon quite early. So I left at about 18, and I exclusively assisted, and then I was shooting. So I didn't answer probably before, but the people that I worked with a lot, I still work with them a lot today. Angelo, Colin, Fran Burns, Bella Howard.
Love Bella.
Yeah, she's great. Matt Irwin, I shot with like constantly back then.
Yeah.
So they were kind of the people I came through with. And they were all kind of just winging it and starting out as well. And the style that they wanted to shoot in, that kind of like grungy,
lo-fi,
relaxed,
street casty,
was really good. I really enjoyed that, and I could really see that person, and I knew the character they were always wanting to create, which is kind of what's informed Bleach as well. But in that time period, I mean, I tried a few other things. I worked on the X Factor, which was really fun for 2 seasons when I was, you back then you didn't really get paid to assist. So I had to whilst I was out of the salon, I had to kind of do a job that would pay, and the X Factor paid like $250 a day, which was loads when I was 18. And it was a really fun time for the X Factor as well.
I bet,
It was, I got to work. I came up with the concept for Jedward's hair.
Did you? Hold on.
With production.
Did you really?
Yeah, so they kind of had the quiffy thing anyway, but the lead stylist, Ben Mahappy, who owns Salon Benjamin now in LA, would give me the acts he didn't like because I was quite good already and I was already doing the shows. He thought I was quite cool because I wasn't a X Factor
created
style.
Jedward's hair?
Yeah. Well, I influenced Jedward's hairstyle, but so Ben would give me the acts that he didn't want to love that much, and Jedward were kind of, they're
a laugh,
a specific choice.
They're great,
I loved working with them. It was really funny. But I was with the producers and Simon Cowell, and we were talking about what we're going to do. They have this weird hair, and I was like, do you know what? Let's just go with it. Let's make it bigger and blonder every week, and by the end, it's just going to be like ginormous. And they're like, yeah, love it.
Amazing.
That was really fun. So I did that for 2 seasons, and it was that point. It was really fun. People would text me. All my fashion friends would be like, what's going on this week? Oh my God, who's in the final? They would have like watching parties at people's houses. And then
X Factor's huge. It was huge.
It was really fun.
So important, really, wasn't it? It was a massive moment. That's really funny.
It was really fun. And then I was colouring for people, and I had a makeshift salon in my house.
Wow.
Which is the story I always tell for Bleach. It's like, it literally was in my kitchen, and then we opened a shop.
Right. Just getting on with it. So how did Bleach come about? Started in the kitchen, doing hairdos. Yeah. And did you just think, I think it's about time, I could do this, this could be something?
Yeah, I always imagined when I moved to London that there would be this salon I always thought it was on Brick Lane. It probably does exist, but I don't know, I couldn't find it. There would be this salon on Brick Lane, because that was cool. It's not that cool now, but
it used to be the coolest place.
I was like, there's going to be this salon on Brick Lane where everyone's just having a great time. They're all doing hair colour. It's like grungy, but it's like 80s, but everyone's it's like partying all the time. And that's where I'm going to work. And I was like, it got to a point, and I was like, doing people's hair in my house, and everybody was coming around. I'm still too like shy to ask for money from people. So I would charge everyone like 40 quid to cover the product. And I would often say, oh, I've got loads of other people around, so I might need a hand.
Yeah.
So people would come around. The product literally did cost me like 20, 30 quid as well. So I'd make a tenner on each hairdo. I'd have so many people in my house. My phone would be ringing constantly. I'd be letting everyone down. My house was trashed. I lived with somebody. They were like, there's just shit everywhere all the time. You've taken over. And I was like, oh, I know, but I've got all these people that want to come. So what do I do? And it wasn't a conscious thing of like, oh, I'm going to have a brand that launches a product. I'm going to own multiple salons. But I knew I needed to move out of my house and stop being messaged by people. And I was like, I need to find a way to monetize this properly because I'm not confident. I wasn't confident. Well, not even confident, but everybody was broke as well. So who am I to say?
And by the way, Alex still never asks for anything. You've done my hair a million times and you're like, no, it's fine. She's still very sweet and humble and never asks for anything.
It's different now, but yeah, back then it was like, oh, have you got that 40 quid? And everyone would be like, yeah, I have. And I know that everyone was broke. So people would bring a bottle as well.
Yeah.
And everybody would be doing each other's hair. We'd be drinking wine. But there was like all sorts in there. Mandy Leonard used to be there all the time. If anyone knows her, she's really fun. But then I'd have Alice, Dalal, and all the girls from her band would come around. We'd do that hair. And then there were just people from work.
Yeah.
Fran and Co, Katie Shillingford, all the people that had the platinum hair, Phoebe Arnold back then.
Yeah.
But it was out of control. So I was like,
how do we make this work?
How do I make this work? And Wah Nails had just opened. So a lady called Charmadine Reed had opened this nail bar that was kind of like a Harajuku style Japanese nail bar that did nail art, which was not done then, unless you'd been to Japan.
Yeah.
And I'd just come back from Japan, saw Sharma had opened this salon and nail bar, and I was like, wow, how the hell? She was like 1 year older than me. I was like, how the hell has she done that? And it was cool, and everyone was.
Yeah.
It was that thing I was looking for.
I've had my nails done in Wah Nails before. I had a stained glass window talon.
It's so good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I went in. Well, one of my friends and clients, Sam, was a business person. She could do like business stuff and accounts. So me and her decided to do it together. And I went in, we were looking for an investor. It was so mad. We nearly got a 20 grand investment, but we were going to give away 80% of the business, the fictitious business that didn't exist yet. So we decided that was a bad deal even then. We nearly did it. But I went to get my nails done at Wah, and Sharma was there. I didn't know her. And I said, she was like 7 months pregnant as well, 7 or 8 months pregnant. And I said, oh, how did you start this? I'd really like to open something like this. And she said, on the spot, didn't know me at all, didn't know anything about me. She said, well, you can have 2 chairs in the back if you want. And I said, oh, we need to plumb a sink in. And she went, yeah, you can plumb a sink in. So she gave us 2 spaces at the back of Wah. I borrowed.
Was that in Dalston?
That was in Dalston, where we have a salon now.
Yeah.
So I borrowed, me and Sam borrowed like £1 each off our parents. We paid to plumb this sink in. And she let us have that space for like 3 or 4 months for free. And then we were busy straight away doing.
And did you already have sort of like a few people that would come and work for you, and
I had one.
Or were you doing it the whole time?
My good friend who still works at Bleach, called Alicia Dobson.
Alicia
was our first employee, and she actually co-owns a Brixton Bleach, and still like my best friend in the business. Like she's just amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky.
What products were you using at the beginning then? You were just using other hair dyes and things, and then you decided that actually it was time to do your own thing.
Yeah, so I used a lot of Wella, L'Oreal, a bit of Matrix. That's what my mum uses. So we were using a mixture, and actually there were certain things that I always had in my arsenal when I was doing hair at home. So I learnt with very few products you can do quite a lot. But grey hair was a big trend then. Well, not big, I mean big, like 4 of my clients had it. It became more of a trend after that. Dip dye had just started. Bella Howard had the first version of dip dye. I think Katie Shillingford had one as well.
Do you know what I was just about to say? One of my favourite hair moments was Katie Shillingford's wedding. That felt really quite shocking to me.
Yeah, me.
It was really amazing. She's such an amazingly beautiful person as well. But I remember thinking, I don't know, it was shocking for some reason.
Yeah, it was fun actually. Do you know what people always, when people are getting married, my friends who ask me often bring up that reference, and I've had people come to the salon asking for it, and I'm like, oh, I can't really redo that actually. But...
Yeah. So you had the salon, you had your 2 chairs. And I guess it just got busier and busier, didn't it? And you then had to expand.
It was busy from day one. So we announced my move. I announced from my personal Tumblr, hey, I'm not doing hair at home anymore. I've opened a salon. It's called Bleach. Please come call us on this number.
The dog drinking my water. Biscuit, come here. She's off.
It was busy straight away. Then we moved into Topshop. Topshop was really fun as well. Boots approached us and said, oh, we've seen all your press, all this hair colour. We're looking to incubate young brands. Do you want to do a product range? And I was like, oh yeah, I've got it. It's all written down and ready to go. Like, I've got the products. I know what we would be doing. So we developed out the range with Boots for about 18 months. Then we launched into Boots with them, and I think it was one of the most successful launches they'd ever had, which was quite amazing at the time because you couldn't buy what we were doing anywhere. So the brands like Crazy Colour, Manic Panic, who are similar, weren't selling in a retailer like that. So also we were selling bleach and toner didn't exist. So I would do, like, when I was doing hair on people and just buying product, I would always run to Boots to grab stuff. You couldn't buy a toner, you couldn't buy a bleach either. So I was a bit like, if you want to do this at home, how do you
get those brassy tones out on your own?
Toner still doesn't exist really. Or it's called lots of different things. So
you have purple shampoo, don't you, which is kind of a toner.
Purple shampoo, which also, well, ours is called silver shampoo, but people didn't understand what that was. That didn't exist either. So we launched all these weird first to market products. Lol, the lingo. First to market products in Boots that were like very staple in, especially at Bleach, but in all salons that consumers just didn't have access to. So the only option, and it's still kind of like that. Apart from there's a few brands, copycat brands as well, that have launched the same products, but it's still a weird financial hierarchy of where you get your hair done. So if you want to bleach and tone your hair in a salon, even at Bleach as well, it's very expensive, and then you didn't have the option to do it at home before. So it was like, if you had bleached hair, you were kind of revolutionised
it, because the only other thing was just a box dye with a colour. A pre, and who kind of knows what's going in those boxes anyway. I mean, you've recently opened a salon in LA as well, haven't you? Congrats.
Thanks.
That was last year.
That was last year, end of last year.
End of last year, and it's got an amazing, funky interior.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on in there. It's got an epoxy resin. It's all supposed to feel like you're kind of immersed in the world of having your hair dyed and slime. So as you walk in, we've got this green swirly epoxy resin floor, but we also are playing this projection of a video we made, which is like an animation of what it's like to be a hair at Bleach with sound effects. So you walk in and then it comes at you from the ceiling. There's like splodges of colour and snipping. There's like water sounds, bubbles, combing, and it all has a soundscapes to go with it. So you can stand in there in the shop section and be like,
experience.
It's
amazing.
Quite fun.
And do you feel like what's hair in the States like? Because I don't think there was nothing like Bleach in America either.
No, there isn't. And what was interesting was I thought we would have to tone it down a bit for the American market, but on the first week we opened there, the most popular colour was Slime Light, which is a neon green.
Is that quite a Billie Eilish?
Yeah, it's kind of the Billie Eilish colour. But people are quite up for it. And, I think a lot of influences from London as well in terms of hair colour.
So I actually really want to talk to you about your professional career outside of Bleach, because you have this absolutely amazing career. You work for Gucci, you've shot with pretty much every photographer there is, and also you have a really amazing roster of like celebs and music artists and so tell me a bit about that, and who are some of your clients and your favourite work and that kind of thing.
So yeah, that's my other job. So I always say I've got 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah. And 3 now.
3 and a baby now, yeah, just to add to the mix. But so yeah, I still do session work quite a lot. Not in the last couple of months, I just had a baby, but I worked, well, I have actually. I went to work on Celine with the baby when she was 10 weeks for 2 weeks, which was quite fun.
That's
but
nice.
yeah, I work with a lot of fashion brands. I work with some VIPs. Gucci's probably who I've taken up the majority of my time over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been working with them for a long time. And that's really fun. I've kind of travelled the world with that. I started working with Celine in lockdown. So it was one of the first times I'd done a job as purely a colourist.
Yeah.
And I was really COVID nervous. I've got asthma. You can remember I was being quite, I was like, is everybody going back to work?
We can't have more time off.
But they booked, I got booked on the Celine job to be the colourist. And I was like, that's fine. I can kind of distance from people a bit on set. And they work really amazingly. So you go away for 2 weeks and you do the fitting and the looks on the models.
That's a very long job.
It's a really long job, but it's actually really nice, especially if you're doing colour, because you can see how it progresses over the 2 weeks. So if you get someone in the chair on day 1, you can see how it looks in 2 weeks, kind of top it up. And the designer really likes to fit the clothes on the models with the hair and makeup done.
Yeah.
Which was an amazing way to work, because usually you just go there for the afternoon and get through it. So as a colourist, it's impossible. So if I do colour on shows and shoots, I'm normally doing it on wigs or extensions, or it'll be one model, and you can't really
take the time to actually create something really sort of nice and perfect, and it's always a bit of a rush, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always a rush, and it's always kind of like, how long are you going to be? Oh, hair bleaching, that takes 5 hours. We can't do that. Can you use a hairspray?
I always feel, no, I do. I do always feel for the hair team, you know, especially with shows and stuff, because often we rock in, and unless it's like a really, you know, intense look, you're often having to bleach and cut and do, you know, and if you've got like 40 models or whatever in a show, you're there till like 4 a.m. most of the time before a show, whereas everybody else kind of gets to go home. So it is a big job.
Yeah, it's difficult because you've got to look at people's hair length, texture, type beforehand. So you can't just pick and choose what you're going to do on someone. It has to work. And I think often, you know, the best hair probably does take 2 days. But on this job, I get to do 2 days of hair dyeing, so I love it.
You take your time and just, you kind of then know that you're going to do something really great because you've got the time to clean up any mistakes or try something else or whatever.
Yeah, and it's the same with working with a celebrity. So often I try and be really realistic with people, and I think that's what they like. I go in there and I'm really like, right, this is going to take me 2 weeks actually. I've got the luxury of doing that, and especially on music artists and actresses and stuff.
Well, I mean, and you're probably kind of saving the hair at the same time. You're not rushing to bleach it 4 times. You're kind of spreading things out and letting the hair recover a bit or whatever you... I don't know if that's a thing.
That is. You got it right there. You know,
taking your time. I'm like,
now you've got brown hair.
Can't do anything with it now. Do you want to take a break?
Let me just grab this baby. Papa. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Come on, Bobby. Let's take this baby. I'm gonna say to everyone, it's easy to have a baby.
Well, I mean, you are managing to turn up to work and have a baby, so it is possible. When do you make the call of, I'm going to step away and take time out and have a family and a baby and stuff, and then also come back to it? And how was that with you? It's 5 months ago, and how did you manage all of it?
Well, it's interesting actually, because I always thought that, and I remember being really annoyed. Not annoyed, but I'd had this fertility checkup, and the doctor said, you know, it's pretty much now or never, and that I'm young for that. And I remember I had a bath one day after that, and I was like, God, this is annoying. Just getting into my stride. I'm really enjoying my career. And this is something the men don't have to deal with, and being really like, oh, this is annoying. I opened the LA salon when I was pregnant.
Yeah, I remember. That was amazing. I mean, I was looking at pictures of you on in the building site, basically. Like 7 months pregnant or something, 8 months pregnant.
I had a lot of, you said about being a workaholic, I had a lot of workaholic female friends text me and be like, wow, you're an inspiration. Actually, I think it's not about that. It's not about like toxically carrying on. Ideally, what you want to do at that time is say, actually, I'm going to take this time out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to progress my career at this point. And I'm going to do something that's separate. And it really is quite separate, because there's no, you know, it's not benefiting your career in any way.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people use or have their pregnancies, etc., like make them, you know,
Release a kids line.
or they use it for work. But actually, I
Yeah.
have found it quite nice and freeing. And, you know, that adrenaline of like work, you realise without that what your life is like a little bit. And obviously it's amazing to bring a child into the world. And I don't have any of that sentiment before of like, oh, poor me, I have to be a woman and have a baby now, or else I can't have one.
Yeah.
And men don't have to make this choice. I'm actually like, oh, I'm quite relieved
Yeah.
that I've had one.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. And what I found as well, so I thought it was probably more paranoia than actual, well, I was out of the country as well, and my agent, who's your agent, will attest to that. Like, I was like, in the first couple of months of my pregnancy, I was like, I'm definitely not getting booked as much, people must know I'm pregnant. And then by the end of it, I had clients begging me to go on shoots, and I was like, no, I can't come, I'll need a stool, or I'll need 6 assistants, and then even one job was like messaged asking me to do a show for them, and Gab, my agent, who's your agent, was like, when's your due date? And the show was on my due date, and she was like, it was in France, and they were saying, she was like, I've asked the client, they said they'll look after you. I was like, what do you mean they'll look after me?
What, they'll provide a birthing pool in case, and a couple of towels in case your waters break.
I was like, no, I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I obviously can't. And I said, but you can offer them a Zoom. So there was a week period where they were considering whether I was going to Zoom in.
Wow. Well, that's a
would have been
testament. I
quite
mean,
funny.
listen, that is basically just a testament to your, like, incredible artistic, you know,
It would-
expertise and personality.
Yeah. But yeah, that would have been quite fun actually. Do you know what I found as well, going back to work? Obviously she's only 5 months old, but I've got the business, and I thought I was going to take longer off, like fully off, but I took about 2 or 3 months fully off, kind of, apart from the odd meeting. But I go into the office 2 days a week, and I've done a couple of shoots. What I find is I really appreciate my job more.
Yeah.
Not that that's necessarily healthy either, but I think there's this. We're really privileged to be in our position, and I think when you go through the day-to-day of being respected as an artist, being respected as a business owner,
Not being vomited on, not
Yeah.
being...
and then and having a moment away from it and going back to
Yeah.
like stay in a really amazing hotel,
And-
to go on a
and the
job, and
sense of
somebody asks
independence.
you, and suddenly you're like, oh wow, this takes on a whole new meaning where this is actually amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't think I think it's given me some clarity around,
Yeah.
you know, life's great. At points, I'm sure you have as well, when you've got burnout, you think, God, I can't do this, this is so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I'm just like, wow, this is
actually
really fun.
rebalanced to you somehow.
Yeah.
Before we end this, it's been so lovely talking to you about everything. I asked you to bring in something that was meaningful, and, you know, some point in your career, you know, you gained an object that has some sentimental value, or... And I wondered, I can see it behind you, but I wondered if you wanted to just bring it out and talk about it. And she's finding a seat.
Okay, so this actually goes back to a little bit of what we were talking about. So when I worked with Lindell, when I was assisting, she didn't used to pay me. Sometimes she would pay me if the client paid, but she used to pay me in clothes.
Aww.
So sadly, Lindell passed away last October, very suddenly.
Yeah.
And the whole industry has been in mourning and very shocked. And I feel like for me, it was really interesting. So she passed away the week before I had Bobby. And it was a really weird thing to go through, because she was a semi-maternal figure in my life, especially when I was younger. I worked with her for like 3 years, and we had such an amazing time, and she really opened my eyes to not just what the industry could be, but what you could be as a person. And she was really supportive, and she kind of, you know, she would make you feel as if you could be yourself. She used to call me her moody goth sister.
Well, she was quite a party animal as well, wasn't she?
She was a party
really
animal,
had a great
yeah.
sense of fun and
Yeah. And I went to lots of first things with her. She took me to New York when I was 18, which is when I got this dress actually. So this is for some of the assistants to hear actually. So I went to New York Fashion Week with her. I think we did about 3 or 4 shows. She took me out every night. I had a fake ID. She was cool with that. And we stayed in an apartment that was her friend's, and she made me a bed of coats. And I slept.
Oh, that's nice.
I was so grateful.
Living the
for
high
it.
life in New
Just
York.
like, wow, this is amazing. But at the end of that trip, she gave me this dress, and it's
lovely.
one that I still wear sometimes. Actually, not at the moment.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. So nice to talk to you.
And you.
And I really learned a lot about your life that I had no idea about. We'll put a link in the description box to Alex's Instagram and to the Bleach London website, so you can have a little bit more of a look at Alex's work. So thank you again for coming in.
Thanks for having me.